When hibernating, Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels enter a state called torpor, which minimizes the energy their bodies need to function. Often, a hibernating animal will temporarily come out of torpor, called an arousal episode, and its metabolic rate will rise, burning more of the precious energy the animal needs to survive the winter. Alaska marmots hibernate in groups and therefore burn less energy keeping warm during these episodes than they would if they were alone. A researcher hypothesized that because Arctic ground squirrels hibernate alone, they would likely exhibit longer bouts of torpor and shorter arousal episodes than Alaska marmots did. Which choice best describes data from the table that support the researcher's hypothesis? A. The Alaska marmots' arousal episodes lasted for days, while the Arctic ground squirrels' arousal episodes lasted less than a day. B. The Alaska marmots and the Arctic ground squirrels both maintained torpor for several consecutive days per bout on average. C. The Alaska marmots had shorter torpor bouts and longer arousal episodes than the Arctic ground squirrels did. D. The Alaska marmots had more torpor bouts than arousal episodes, but their arousal episodes were much shorter than their torpor bouts.
So in question number 14, we have a table. So it gives data for both the Alaska marmots and the Arctic ground squirrels. So torpor bouts for Alaska marmots, which sleep in groups, they are 12 bouts they can have, whereas squirrels which sleep alone, they will have only 10.5 bouts of torpor. Torpor is when they go to sleep. So torpor, which minimizes the energy their bodies need to function. So they are hibernating. And what about the duration? The Alaska marmot, which sleeps in groups, the duration per bout, each time it goes into torpor or hibernation, it will be there for 13.81 days, whereas the squirrel can be almost for 17 days, approximately 16.77. So then what about the arousal episodes? So arousal episodes for Alaska marmots, which sleep in groups, they have 11 episodes of waking up basically, and only 9.5 these squirrels, they sleep alone, so they're not disturbed much, I guess. So they are only awaking 9.5 times on an average. And the duration, the Alaska marmots will be awake for at least 21.2 hours, whereas the squirrel will only be awake for 14.2 hours. So what is the hypothesis? A researcher hypothesized that because Arctic ground squirrels hibernate alone, they would likely exhibit longer bouts of torpor. That means because they are sleeping alone, they don't get disturbed much, I guess. So they are having longer bouts of torpor. They sleep for longer time and shorter arousal episodes than Alaska. So even if they wake up, they will only be awake for shorter time compared to marmots. So what we have to choose? We have to choose the choice which best describes data from the table that will support the researcher's hypothesis. So which one should we choose? So choice C is the best answer. Choice C is the best answer because it describes data from the table that support the researcher's hypothesis. According to the text, the researcher hypothesized that Arctic ground squirrels would exhibit longer torpor bouts and shorter arousal episodes than Alaska marmots do. And if we have to put it in the way it is given in the answer, we can change it the other way, that marmots would show shorter torpor bouts and longer arousal episodes than the ground squirrels do. So the table shows data about torpor bouts and arousal episodes for the two species from 2008 to 2011. According to the table, the average duration of torpor bout was 13.81 days for Alaska marmots, which is shorter than the average of 16.77 days for Arctic ground squirrels. And the average duration of arousal episodes was 21.2 hours for Alaska marmots, which is longer than the average of 14.2 hours for Arctic ground squirrels. So thus the table supports the researchers' hypothesis by showing that Alaska marmots had shorter bouts of torpor and longer arousal episodes than Arctic ground squirrels did.
Choice A is incorrect because it inaccurately describes data from the table and doesn't support the researcher's hypothesis. The table shows that the average duration of arousal episodes was less than a day for both Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels, 21.2 hours and 14.2 hours respectively. Additionally, information about arousal episodes for Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels isn't sufficient to support a hypothesis involving comparisons of both arousal episodes and torpor bouts for those animals. Choice B is incorrect because it doesn't support the researchers' hypothesis, which involves comparisons of arousal episodes as well as torpor bouts for Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels. Noting that both animals had torpor bouts lasting several days on average doesn't address arousal episodes at all, nor does it reveal how the animals' torpor bouts compared. Choice D is incorrect because it doesn't support the researchers' hypothesis. Although the table does show that Alaska marmots had more torpor bouts, 12, than arousal episodes, 11, and that their arousal episodes were much shorter than their torpor bouts, 21.2 hours and 13.81 days respectively, comparing data across only Alaska marmot behaviors isn't sufficient to support a hypothesis about torpor and arousal behaviors of both Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels.